Manever I say ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there, I see them yopo.
Kwesi.
Yeah, boss. First and foremost, my brother, the Honorable Member of Parliament, has stated today, right now, that soul sourcing is not illegal.
Yes.
He has said so.
Yes.
The implication of what he has just said is simple. I mean, there are laws governing public procurement. And the laws spell out conditions under which soul sourcing may become the mode of awarding the contract.
True.
So the issue for us as citizens is whether the laws have been complied with. Clear, whether the laws have been complied with or they have been violated. That's a substantial issue. So far, I haven't had one argument saying that the laws have been flouted.
It's a moral argument so far. Nothing to do with the law.
There's nothing that anybody has said indicating that the laws have been violated.
True.
Then there's an issue of language and interpretation. The emphasis is on the fact that the current president said that if he assumed office, he will make soul sourcing real.
An exception.
What does that mean? It doesn't mean that there will be no soul sourcing, but the incidence of soul sourcing will be reduced. Is that not what it means? The language.
Yes.
It will be reduced. It will be reduced to the extent that it may pale into insignificance when compared with non-soul sourced contracts. Is that not the case?
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's look at the facts. And some of the facts have been provided by Felix Kwesi. And the facts provided by Felix Kwesi indicates that since this government came into power, only 3% of contracts have been awarded on the basis of sole contract. This is contested by my brother here, who says that don't just look at the numbers of contracts which have been awarded, but look at the value of the contracts which have been awarded.
You think it's more important?
More important. Nobody can question him. But when you talk about making soul sourcing real, are you talking about the value or you are talking about, the
number of contracts?
Numbers and so on. So that's something that we can all deal with. In any case, my friends from the New Patriotic Party make it seem like what this government has done is worse than what they did in office. The facts don't point to that. According to the Auditor General, whilst they were in office, more than 90% of the contracts that they awarded, in fact around 95%, was done on the basis of sole sourcing.
Roads contracts?
Yes, road contracts.
Or is it contracts in general?
Road contracts.
I'm just referring to the Auditor General's report.
Yes.
Yeah.
Auditor General's report, yes.
Was done on the basis of sole sourcing.
Yes.
That's a substantial difference. Okay? So this government is not doing worse than what the NPP did. That's also established. But you see, all of us would have to agree that we have to use methods of awarding contracts which bring about greater transparency and better money for value analysis. Nobody can disagree with that. Indeed, the president, when he made his comments in which he asked the Fourth Estate to submit its report and so on, also made the same point, that the important thing is value for money, you understand? And that the processes ought to be transparent and the processes ought not to encourage, graft and corruption and so on. The president makes the same argument that all of us are making. Now, the president has requested for the report of the Fourth Estate. And I want to state publicly that quite apart from the respect that I've had for the Fourth Estate, I've also had tremendous respect for someone like Suleimana. He's one of our most brilliant journalists. In all my dealings with him, he's turned out to be or has come up as somebody who treasures values of discipline and so on. So But it doesn't mean that he cannot make mistakes like all of us. He's fallible.
Yes.
You understand? But then I think that he will not go out of his way to do something which will discredit him or destroy his credibility. The president has asked for the report. The report will be looked at, it will be studied. And mind you, the report was based on data which was provided by the ministry itself. Okay? And then all of us can come to conclusions about the way forward.
Well,
in the position.
I have a bit of a challenge with this, with the president's report, the request for the report. What report is the president requesting for? The report is out there. It's public. Every information that was provided to the Fourth Estate by the Roads Ministry was something that I believe the cabinet had approved. And so the president by now must have access to the report.
The Fourth Estate report,
yes,
is not just a compilation of documents from the Roads Ministry. The Fourth Estate report is first a compilation of documents of the Roads Ministry. It's also analysis, which involves judgments and so on.
Right.
So when the president requests for reports,
he wants all of that.
He wants all of that. If it's just about the documents from the Roads Ministry,
that he
can just ask the Roads Minister to give the documents. But it's more than that. It includes value judgments on the documents which came from the ministry. You understand? So I'm hoping that this whole exercise will be completed in good time, so all of us can have access to the final outcome and all of us can make a determination. Now, what the president promised in opposition was to review the procurement law, and to tighten it such that its abuse can be minimized. That has not been done.
Right.
It hasn't been done. In all honesty, it hasn't been done. So I'm sure that the public, all of us, are looking forward to measures which will tighten the procurement laws and make sure that sole sourcing actually becomes as rare as the president promised in opposition. But given what we have now, the Fourth Estate report and so on, I would suggest very strongly that some of the positions which have been taken are unduly alarmist. You understand? Because, when I'm hit with the figures, and I find that 97% of all contracts awarded were done without sole sourcing. And I look at I listen to the public discussion on sole sourcing and so on, there's a gap. The impression you get is that, look, something excessively criminal has been done. Most of the contracts were awarded on sole sourcing basis and so on. It is not exactly true. You understand? But the president must keep the commitments he made in opposition. Finish.
That's it. All right.
Yeah, Moro, just a little point. When the MPP was in government, and they did the sole sourcing, and was there any criminality?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
So what the MPP did at the time, there was no criminal issue. So the opposition then, their outrage at the MPP government at the time was not because of any criminality. It was also a moral issue.
Right.
No moral. I just want you to get my point.
Yeah.
So it was a moral issue.
It was a moral issue.
So MPP did not do any criminality with their sole source.
It was a moral issue.
Okay.
And at the time,
it wasn't just a moral issue.
Right.
It wasn't just a moral issue. There was suspected criminality.
Inflated costs.
Suspected criminality.
So as we speak now, those suspected criminality.
Can I?
Oh, sorry.
There's suspected criminality.
Right.
Because of the assumption then that some contracts were awarded directly to relatives of big men in government.
Right.
So if you award contracts to your relatives without sole sourcing, suspicion is aroused.
Right.
You understand?
Right.
So that's what happened in the MPP era. In this particular case, I'm yet to hear of the president or the vice president's brother being awarded some of the contracts on sole sourcing basis.
Right. In fact, the reason why I didn't want to raise matters of criminality was because, for me, until a court of competent jurisdiction pronounces the person to be guilty, that's why I didn't want to raise the issue.
No, it says suspected. Suspected.
That's fine.
Suspected.
That's fine.
Is that it?
Suspected may not be substantive.
I agree with you.
It's suspected criminality.
Yes.
And that's somewhere awarded to brothers and friends. No problem. Yeah. So now when
I didn't add friends.
Brothers.
Yes. Family relatives.
So when now government contracts, government assets, government things that belong to government or government contracts are awarded to brothers, they are suspected criminality.
Sole sourcing.
Oh.
You should add the sole sourcing.
Sole sourcing.
You should add the sole sourcing.
Yes.
Then there's
but if there's competitive bidding,
no, I'm saying it
goes through everything.
There's no illegality when there's sole sourcing.
Right?
There's no illegality when it is sole sourcing, but the laws allow for sole sourcing.
Yes.
However, I'm going to point when it is sole source to a president's brother.
Yes.
Or the vice president's relative.
Let's say the president's family relative.
So there's a suspected sole source, suspected criminality. That's not it.
Yes.
Okay, fine. So, but as of now, we've not established that the sole sourcing that was done by the MPP,
yes,
which led to all the bashing by the NDC, people sitting in cabinet now. It means they did so on the basis of moral issues, not because they were any criminality.
Well, suspected.
Suspected. Oh, suspected. That's what you're saying, Kwesi.
Yeah.
It's suspected.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So the Ghanaian people who are watching and listening to me, if you give contract worth 40 billion, it may be 2%, it may be 3%. But when you look at the value of that sole source, which is equivalent to almost 50 billion Ghana cedis, it's not a problem. I'm saying a time will come when the quiet Ghanaian people will take a decision on these things, whether there's double standards or not. They'll take a decision. Because the Ghanaian people watch and listen to press conferences by the people in government now on sole sourcing. It was not about criminality, as we are saying now. They just made the issue about as if something dangerous has happened. Today, they have sole source almost 50 billion Ghana cedi. They say it's just 3%. The Ghanaian people are watching. They are listening to us. A time will come, a decision will be made. That's my point.
No, colleagues, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Look, ultimately, the final arbiters are the people of Ghana.
Absolutely.
Ultimately. So, to that extent,
yes,
you are absolutely right. There's no problem with that. You understand? However, Collins, these press conferences you referred to were made by all of you. All of you held press conferences, and all of you took positions. The only thing is that there were differences in the positions that you took. Again, it's important to avert our minds to the fact that all this debate about sole sourcing before 2024 and so on was actually occasioned by an Auditor General's report. That formed the basis of the agitation. You shouldn't forget that it was an Auditor General's report which formed the basis of the agitation. Okay? Of at least 500 to 700 years. So to attempt to simplify it is to mislead. You know, you cannot simplify this very complex matter. It's important for us to understand that 75% of US citizens are opposed to the war. Official statistics. 75% of US citizens are opposed to this war. They think it's senseless, it is not justified, has no merit. 75% of US citizens. Now one may ask, why? Even before we answer the question why, yesterday, the Trump administration was blaming the US media, saying that the US media is not with them and that the US media is supporting Iran. Donald Trump took on the CNN. There are even doubts about his own supporters in the media, Fox News and so on. Some of the things they are putting out. You understand? This is one of the contexts that we have to grapple with when we come to analyze this situation. Now, it's important to ask a question. How come the U.S. citizens are against this war? 75%, not 51%, 75%. How come? You see, everybody in the United States of America sees the U.S. in decline. And the decline is obvious. On the streets of Philadelphia, you find hundreds of people, I'm not talking about tens, hundreds of people who are homeless, who are sleeping rough on the streets. They cannot feed themselves. You understand? They have no accommodation, they have no access to health care, they have no access to education. Washington, on the streets of Washington, there are thousands of homeless people. On the streets of New York, Los Angeles, in California, everywhere. The American people cannot afford bread. They are dying out of hunger, starvation. They have no access to social services. This is the great America. And I heard my friend and brother Abbas describe America in glowing terms. This is America. This is the true America. If you go to New York today, the subway system, which used to be the pride of New York, is in shambles. It's one of the worst subways in the world. It cannot compare to the subway in London. It cannot compare to the subway in Moscow. It cannot compare to the subway in Pyongyang. It is one of the worst. It is in shambles, complete shambles. This is the USA. You understand? Michael Moore did a documentary comparing the health system in the United States of America and the health system in Cuba. Cuba was way ahead when it came to providing for the health needs of its citizens and so on. So by every indicator, if you take the literacy rate, America is not in the top 10. Whatever social indicator you take, America is declining. Today, if you look at the industrial sector, how much manufacturing takes place in the United States of America? How much manufacturing? China has completely overtaken the United States of America in manufacturing. In fact, most manufacturing is outsourced to China. That is why the American people are waking up. They are seeing that their empire has collapsed. Not that it's collapsing, has actually collapsed. How does America maintain its apparent dominance? America maintains its apparent dominance because of this petrodollar agreement. The agreement in the past, that is changing now, which says that petroleum prices should be priced in the dollar. Because America left the gold standard a long time ago. The American dollar is no longer backed by gold. It's useless paper. America just prints the dollar. It has no backing. It left the gold standard. So what makes the American dollar useful and powerful is that the price of petroleum products are priced in the dollar. The moment we stop buying petrol in the dollar, the US currency will completely collapse. That is why America is desperate. Because today, Russia is selling its oil not in the dollar. It's selling its oil in rubles. China is selling its oil, or is trading in oil, in the yuan, not in the dollar. And many countries are beginning to follow the example, India and so on. So the US has panicked. Now, through this system, which makes the dollar the currency of preference for international trade. What the US did or continues to do is that it exports its inflation. US has a huge deficit. How does it resolve it? It just prints more paper. Paper which is not backed by anything, just prints more. And because all of us have become dependent on the dollar, that way the US is able to export its inflation. The US burdens us. The inflation we suffer here, our balance of payments problems and so on, is partly the result of US dominance, which is nothing. US dominance is not based on production, it's not based on anything. It's just based on a world system which says that we should buy petroleum products in dollars. You understand? So the people of America, the ordinary citizens, the Chicanos, the Latinos, the African Americans and so on, want to see the rebirth of the country. They want to see a country which is back in production. They want to see a country which is opening up social services for the disadvantaged and so on, rather than a country which today is spending close to $2 billion a day on the war with Iran. That is how much money the US is spending on this senseless aggression against a sovereign state. So even the citizens of the US are opposed to this war. That's one context. Let's look at another context. The Iran nuclear program did not begin with the Iranian Revolution in 1979. The nuclear program existed before the Iranian Revolution of 1979. Indeed, the nuclear program started in 1954. And a lot of people don't know this. The Iranian nuclear program started in 1954. And it started with the assistance of the United States of America. When the Iranian nuclear program started, the US provided the equipment and so on for the start of the program. In fact, the US trained more than 4,000 nuclear scientists to start the program. That program was assisted by Germany and France. They were suppliers to that program and so on. And they had no problem with the Iranian nuclear program then. Why? Because they had a puppet regime in Tehran. Okay? They began having problems with the Iranian nuclear program after 1979. And by the way, the Iranian nuclear program, when it started in 1954, and the Americans' provision and so on, achieved 95% enrichment. 95% enrichment. The Americans had no problem with it. 95% enrichment of uranium. They had no problems with it. Okay. Now, the revolution occurred. US interest was obviously subverted because Iran became independent. Iran insisted on its sovereignty and so on. The US tried many shenanigans in order to subvert the Iranian Revolution. And one of the things they did was to provide assistance to Iraq to attack Iran. The Iraq-Iran war, don't forget it, was instigated by the US. Saddam Hussein was assisted by the US to wage war on Iran. The US was completely defeated in that war. The US and its allies were completely defeated in that war. You understand? And since then, the US and its allies have constantly been subverting the Iranian Revolution. That is part of the historical context. But more. You see, the United States of America decided that whatever it takes, it will overthrow the Iranian regime and establish a puppet regime for the only reason that it needed to control energy resources. That's the key. And you see, I don't make these as empty claims. For anybody listening to us this morning, I refer to the Cheney report of 2001. Just Google it on the internet, it will pop up, the Cheney report of 2001. When Bush was elected as president of the US in 2000, he set up the Cheney Committee to assess US energy needs and to make recommendations for resolving the problems associated with how to get US energy needs satisfied. And that is why Dick Cheney wrote the Cheney report. The Dick Cheney Committee wrote what has now come to be known as the Cheney report, which was published in 2001. In the Cheney report, if you read the Cheney report, you are left with no doubt at all that the US ambition is to control global supply of oil. Now, what frightens me as a West African is that there's a portion of the Cheney report which says that it's becoming increasingly difficult to control West Asia, Middle East, the Gulf area, and the US needs to shift its attention to West Africa because West Africa has a huge potential for the production of gas and petroleum and so on, and that if need be, the US should use military force to maintain its control and dominance in West Africa. It's in the Cheney report. Go and read it. Google it. Read it. It's not a very fat report. Everybody can Google it and read it. You understand? So this whole aggression is motivated by the need to control the world's resources, especially in this context, oil and gas. And there's no doubt at all about it. Now, there's another context which is important and which I think we should avert our minds to. Donald Trump is elected. He assumes office. And Donald Trump says to the world that he wants the Panama Canal for the US. That he will take it by force. The Panama Canal is not in West Asia. It's not in Africa. You understand? It's in North America. Donald Trump insists on taking the Panama Canal by force. I hope you're beginning to get what I'm driving at. It doesn't end there. Donald Trump and his administration then decide that they want to take Canada. Now, how can they allow Canada to exist as an independent state? That Canada must become the 52nd state of the United States of America. And that he will stop at nothing to take Canada. What? In 2026? This was in 2025. Another country wants to annex another country completely. Unbelievable. But this is a context. Donald Trump does not stop there. He says Greenland. He wants it. It should belong to the United States of America. Look at where Greenland is and look at where the United States of America is. He wants Greenland. And he says, you will sell it to me. If you refuse to sell it to me, I will take it by force. This is the mental frame. This is the mental frame. It doesn't end there. Donald Trump looks at Cuba and he says, what Cuba? This beautiful island. The most qualified person to become the president of Cuba is Marco Rubio, his foreign minister. He says, Rubio will make a fine president for Cuba. Now, if you're listening to me, are you not getting worried at this stage? Don't you see that somebody is unhinged? obvious that somebody is unhinged. Okay? It doesn't end there. Donald Trump wants the far right in the UK to capture power. So he sends his envoys to the UK to campaign for Nigel Farage. Openly. It doesn't end there. Donald Trump wants Macron's government to fall in France. For Marine Le Pen, the far right, to take over. And he goes to France and is actively campaigning against Macron in France. It doesn't end there. He's doing the same thing in Germany. Now, if I lie, you tell me that I lie. All the things I've said. Because these are brazen, open, and so on. You understand? Now, there is genocide in Palestine. And I dare anybody to say that there has not been genocide or there's no genocide in Palestine. 75,000 people, human beings, have been killed in Palestine. 75,000. 2/3 of them, women and children. It is the Trump administration who supplies the weapons for Israel to commit that genocide. Donald Trump intervenes and says that there's a ceasefire. Now we need a board of peace. Who are the members of the board of peace? Donald Trump, who supplied the weapons which were used to commit the genocide, is chairman of the board. Unbelievable, but it is true. Netanyahu, the architect of the genocide, is a member of the board of peace in Gaza. There is not one single Palestinian on the board. Not one single Palestinian on the board. And we are sitting down and watching this. Unbelievable. You understand? That is one context. That's one context. Now, listen to me carefully. And Sana has said it, so my work is much easier. There is not a shred of evidence suggesting that Iran is producing a nuclear weapon. Not a shred. Iran has been open to inspections for many years. Nobody has found any evidence that Iran is producing a nuclear weapon. Iran has insisted throughout that it has a nuclear program for peaceful purposes. And the nuclear program can be used for medicine, it can be used for agriculture, it can be used for generation of electricity and so on. A nuclear program does not necessarily result in the production of a bomb. But it has many peaceful uses. In fact, Ghana had a nuclear program. Why are we not being bombed? The Atomic Energy Commission at Kwabena had a nuclear program. In fact, the enemies of Ghana and Africa, who stayed the 1966 coup, dismantled the sophisticated reactor we had there and sent it to the United States and got an inferior one in its place. But we have always had some kind of a nuclear program. There's a nuclear department in the Atomic Energy Commission. It is used for radiation.
There's a nuclear authority now.
Yes. It's used for radiation in order to minimize or prevent post-harvest losses of cowpea, of maize, and so on. It's peaceful purposes and so on. So there's not a shred of evidence that Iran is producing a nuclear weapon or is on the verge of the production of a nuclear weapon. The history is this. Over the past 11 years, Israel has constantly alleged that Iran is on the verge of the production of a nuclear weapon.